We're
Okay,
live.
we're live. Okay, welcome. KGB Monday Night Poetry. This is year 23, season 46, episode 10, I believe. Um, I usually try to inhabit last week's brain, think of the number that I said, and then just say whatever the next number is. But I think we're doing good on that front. And we're really excited to have everybody here. And we love the KGB bar, and probably a lot of you do too. So, as he mentioned before, there are ways to support them during this strange time. And we really can't wait till we see any and all of you back at the bar again. I think that that'll be a celebration, maybe not as exciting as the sort of VE Day thing we had going on Saturday, but nevertheless quite fun. And Jason, why don't you take it from there?
All right. So tonight we're celebrating Slappering Hall Press, and I'm going to introduce Margot Taft-Stever, who is the founding editor of Slappering Hall and is going to be introducing the rest of the writers after I introduce her. So Margot Taft-Stever is a citizen of the literary world. In addition to being a brilliant poet in her own right, she is the founder of the Hudson Valley Writers Center and the founder of Slappering Hall Press, a press that we're here for tonight. The Hudson Valley Writers Center is a vibrant literary community that hosts over 40 readings a year, offers free creative writing courses to youth and seniors, and collaborates with multiple arts and community organizations. Slappering Hall, which celebrates 30 years of continuous publication this year, has featured the work of many of the United States' most prominent poets, often before they were prominent, while continuing to support those poets whose work deserves to be read but have yet to receive significant recognition. And as a side note, I am curious, Margot, if you want to touch on it, you can say something or not, but what's your connection to William Howard Taft and his papers? So that's just there if you want to pick that up. Margot is a tireless champion of American poetry and a gifted writer, the author of the collections Cracked Piano, The Hudson Line, and Frozen Spring. She's received praise from luminaries, including Robert Creeley, Maxine Kumin, and Ilya Kaminsky. In her clear-eyed verse, her well-tuned lyric ear resonates with the natural world and the human heart. I had the good fortune to sit next to Margot on a plane to AWP, and we've more or less not stopped talking. And I am thrilled to welcome her to KGB and to hand over tonight's hosting duties to her. Please welcome Margot Taft-Stever.
Thank you, Jason, for the wonderful introduction, and thanks to everyone for attending. I'm honored to be reading in Jason's Monday Night KGB series. I wish it were in the real place, and I'm hoping that we can come back to it soon, with my fantastic Slappering Hall Press poet friends, Susanna H. Case, Amy Lemon, and Lynn McGee. In 1990, when I founded Slappering Hall Press, or SHP, the small press imprint of the Hudson Valley Writers Center, with the principal mission of publishing poets who had not previously appeared in book form, I had no idea that the press would live to celebrate its 30th anniversary and would become one of the oldest and perhaps one of the best known chapbook presses in the country. We have expanded the mission to include advancing the national and international conversation of poetry and poetics. In 2014, in collaboration with Prairie Schooner and Poetry Foundation, with co-editors Jennifer Franklin, the wonderful poet and incredible person, and Peggy Ellsberg, who is equally wonderful, and me, Slappering Hall Press published the debut box set of 7 new African poets, including the subsequently celebrated poets Warsan Shire, Nick Makoa, and others. Lynn McGee and Susanna H. Case, who will soon read, both published their first fabulous collections with Slappering Hall Press. In 2011, Slappering Hall Press added the Conversation series, in which a master woman poet chooses an emerging poet to appear in the same collection. Elizabeth Alexander chose Leroy Van Cleef Stefanon to inaugurate the series with their groundbreaking Poets in Conversation and a Conversation, before Alexander was picked by Barack Obama to inaugurate his presidency with her beautiful poem. He was clearly waiting to see who we chose before he decided who to choose for his poet. Denise Duhamel and Amy Lemon created the second Conversation chapbook with their unforgettable collection, Hot or Ice, Poems in Conversation and a Conversation. Please see the Hudson Valley Writers Center website writercenter.org for chapbook contest guidelines or for more information about Slappering Hall Press or the Hudson Valley Writers Center. And so I'm going to read first, and then I will introduce Amy Lemon, and we will proceed forward with everyone else. And the first poem that I will read is from my first book, Frozen Spring, and the poem's titled Conversation with Bertolt Brecht. The first reference to Chilean songs of revolution is to the great singer-songwriter Victor Jara, who lived from 1932 to 1973. He was also a teacher, theater director, poet, and communist political activist rounded up in the stadium, now renamed the Victor Jara Stadium, where soldiers crushed his fingers with the butts of their rifles and murdered him only days after the coup that brought Pinochet to power. This begins with an epigraph by Brecht. Conversation with Bertolt Brecht. Solely because of the increasing disorder in our cities of class struggle, some of us have now decided to speak no more of cities by the sea, snow on roofs, women. As if the Chilean songs of revolution would bring back the gray fishing boats sailing through frail, deepening waters at dawn, and the seagulls making earthly sounds. As if these songs could restore the balance, the driven leaf, nail old and rusted, shoved through the bent bough. Each step through mirrors brings us back to the pitch of sleeplessness, the unstrung dream, an oil slick on an ocean still and black. As if all the songs of revolution could bring the murmuring tree back, could restore wind to the rigging, full sail to the morning light. How many years, messages, wars, strange incidences, ironies. The wary eye of the mother wanted to protect her child, promise more. Cities near the sea, clear waters, full sail, the morning light. Now I'll read some poems from Cracked Piano, published last year by Cabin Carey Press. In the latter half of the 19th century, as part of a humanistic movement in the treatment of mental patients, hospital superintendents held balls for their patients. Spectators were sometimes invited. The Lunatic Ball. After Dance in a Madhouse, a painting by George Bellows, who lived from 1882 to 1925. Furious dancing gives way to screams. 5 men stare, ghoulish, at the wall. This is a lunatic ball. The best student Yale had ever seen. 3 months after graduation, typhoid, brains swelled inside his skull. They dosed out calomel. 5 ghosts appeared in a mercury dream, headaches unbearable. This is a lunatic ball. Married 1 year, baby the next, his wife filed for release. The medical textbooks he gleaned, futile, endless stall. A woman names her baby doll Christ, lurches, leans, a building in an earthquake, then she crawls. This is the lunatic ball. 1 man plays a flute, calls himself Faunus. Another uses an invisible latrine. Attendants howl out a wild man in a straitjacket on a wooden beam. A woman growls like a bear. This is a lunatic ball. Behind a glass wall, well-dressed spectators riveted sit amused. Looking at them, looking, the patients know they are through. Spectacled men sport greatcoats and laced up women make jokes in the shimmering hall. One of my sisters and I designated a tree in a neighbor's field as our grandfather tree, which we worshiped during our childhood, and that's referenced in the next poem. Idiot's Guide to Counting. How do you become one with the horse, riding and becoming the act of riding, and the horse becoming the self and the other at exactly the same second, counting strides, counting muscle movement, counting fences, hurdling over them with the horse, counting the everything of one? How do you count? How do you pull a muscle turning over in bed at night? Measurements that change everything, counting back to everything, the everything of one, the pulled muscles of the back of one, the entanglement of one, the waves of particles, counting back, the quantum. How to become one with the branches of a tree, a grandfather tree in an apple orchard that no longer exists. Separate one from tree, horse, counting numbers, counting the grandfather tree to find the solution of one. Counting trees, leaves, counting everything as no longer existing, counting trees as one with the everything that no longer exists. Another core of cracked piano is the mercurial role of mothers. And I'll read a poem next about an axe murderer whom one of my brothers-in-law represented as a lawyer. Splitting wood. It was the thought of his entering their infant's room that drove her. She remembered his face the first time she saw him, now half gone from whiskey, eyes hooded like a hawk's. He said he'd kill the children when he woke. The neighbors heard it, the screams they heard. His workman's hand, his gnarled hand dangled down. The knife lay by the bed. She slipped from the covers while he slept, placed her feet on the floorboards just so. The dogs barked outside, snapdragons, flowered tongues, and all the wired faces of the past strung up. The axe hung on the porch, wood pile nearby, each log plotted, uneasily entwined. The children's tears were rain, tears were watering the parched hills. The wild moon foamed at the mouth. The wild moon crept softly at her feet. The arms that grabbed the axe were not her own, that hugged it to her heart while he slept were not hers. The cold blades sinking in his skin. She grew up in the country splitting wood. She knew just how much it took to bring a limb down. Well, I live in Sleepy Hollow, New York, and my next poem is another Sleepy Hollow legend, an alternative to the legend of Sleepy Hollow, perhaps. Raven's Rock, Sleepy Hollow, New York. Ichabod, the headless horseman, rolling hills, the highlands, villages where men tarry at the bars, sleepy towns, Beekman Town, Tarrytown. But who has heard of 3 young women who lost their way in separate incidents many years apart, who took shelter at Raven's Rock and perished in the night? Who knows why they walked the tree-frozen road, their fingers burnt with cold? 3 figures in white, their ethereal, shrill pitch unbearable, gesturing as if the swirling snow, eddies of snow, snow rivers could be human, as if something totally frozen could be alive. What is a raven but a bird, a ghost but a raven bird, and the ghosts of 3 women ravenous waiting at Raven's Rock for a single man to pass by? And did they vent their rage for ages of wrongness, for the unrequited, the undone love, love forced upon them, jealous love hardening them, these women by the Hudson now still, now irrevocably gone? And the last, I'm going to read one more poem from this collection and then a couple of other ones. And this is an elegy for my mother and for nature. My mother is dying. In the place where she belongs, suffering erases itself. Doves bring her seeds. Horses sleep next to her in the straw. Where she belongs, a welcoming place holds her, keeps her from running away, the greenness of the hay turning to gold. Already the rain's restless trajectory. My mother is busy dying. She no longer knows my name. This is the wind of Eden, the wand of change, the last slave of silence, the knave of rain. So quiet the roving of each vacant quest. Let her be buried in the sea by the seaberry, the briar rock, the fossil chamber. A lone, blown, roadside stray, the flown restless wayward ringing. Bells clang, ocean downcast rolls. Wandering once again, now I return to the center, searching the level earth, calling her name, remembering that I am lost. The path unfurls before my dog and me, walking to the rocks, the ocean on one side, the bay on the other, eiders blessing the waves. The seagull's spontaneous burst, how it hurts with the radio blaring. My mother is dying, gone from a body that has abandoned her. Cry because everything goes haywire, because this is Apollo's siren lyre, the field-worn answer, the childless response, children waiting for some God to bring them home. And I wanted to read a few poems from my latest chapbook, also published last year by Cattywampus Press, which is titled Ghost Moose. And some of the poems are on the sixth extinction, which we are currently perpetuating, one of the greatest mass extinctions in the history of the earth and the only one created by us. But I'm going to read a poem, a different poem, not a poem about that. Titled Dolls. The dolls wait for the children to wake up. They lie on their backs, staring upwards as though the ceiling were a resting place. For them, love is what counts. Holding them, talking softly, making certain they sleep comfortably in their beds. Knowing how to dress dolls is an art. Just what color socks each takes, like pouring tea, how many gowns, where the shoes go. Dressing could take all day or just a second. Dirt sticks to a doll. Remember, rain is not right for her. Exposure to the elements breaks down a doll's resistance. Wait until storms abate before leaving with your doll. Time means nothing to her. She will wonder about rain, about everything trains bring. Tree flowers drape light strands like spider babies in soft wind. Dolls are restless on their feet all day, listening for helicopters. They gather on roads after rainfall to smell the concrete getting wet. The newly soaked pavement almost drunk after a dry spell. Dolls on boats head for rocks in high winds. How many times they wish the boat could reverse, but before motors were invented, everyone jumped ship. Each day, supermarket racks sport headlines, dolls gone sour, dolls born with beards, hair grown with snakes, Medusa-like. Not many years ago, the subtext for the next poem would have seemed implausible. End of horses. I write to you from the end of the time zone. You must realize that nothing survived after the horses were slaughtered. We sleep below the hollow burned out stars. We look into dust bowls searching for horses. When you walk in the country, you will be shocked to meet substantial masses on the road. We do not know whom to blame or where the horses were driven, who slaughtered them or for what purpose. Had the horses slept under the linden trees, the generals and engineers pucker and snore on the veranda. And then my last poem is from my unpublished manuscript, Three Ravens Watch. It's titled Ocean Birds. Jealous is the night, the feckless night, coming over us as water into sea, the forceful day's geography turned black. Your body is the sea I float upon, your skin becomes the waves. Nothing will ever bring you here to me, nothing will ever call you back. Thank you very much, and I'm now going to introduce our next venerable author, Amy Lemon, who is the author of 5 poetry collections, most recently, The Miracles, CNR Press 2019. Her poems and essays have appeared in the Best American Poetry, Rolling Stone, New Letters, Prairie Schooner, Verse, Court Green, the journal Marginalia, and many other magazines and anthologies. Amy is professor and chairperson of English and Communication Studies at New York's Fashion Institute of Technology, where she teaches writing and creativity studies classes. She lives in Queens with her 2 children, and she's a Slappering Hall Press poet. Let's welcome Amy Lemon.
Thank you so much, Margot. What stunning poems. What a great reading. Thank you so much. So honored to see so many wonderful people in the audience here. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to start with a poem from The Miracles, and the actual designer of this cover is in our audience, Brandon Saloy. He's amazing, so seek out his work. I also wanted to mention that the poem I'm going to read is from an anthology called Starting Today, 100 Poems for Obama's First 100 Days. So it's a bit of a throwback to those days of hope. The collection was co-edited by Rachel Zucker and Ariel Greenberg, and it started as a blog. So this is my contribution, and it's an acrostic. It's called Audacious and Acrostic. And the phrase that is used in the acrostic is hoping for change. And you may hear Stella in the background in real life. Here she is, smiling and posed, hand on knee. Oh, where did she get that shirt? Tie-dyed pinks and purples swirl into a sparkle-studded heart in the center of her chest, just above the scar no one really notices anymore. Someone else gave her the sparkly shirt, dressed her in it just for picture day, which I somehow missed. And thank God, or she would have been in the drab uniform her principal requires, even of the kids in District 75, the special ones. Could it be that mothering her will always be a series of handings over, letting others more qualified tend, evaluate, and teach? Who will walk with her when she turns 21, if there's not a drop left in the well? What kind of woman will she be, this girl who's never heeded no? May her cherry chapstick kisses ever find a gentle cheek. All her bedtime stories end with best beloved. So she's 19 now, and I'm thinking about these things because we are actually, I'll just tell the people here, we're in the process of applying for residential school placement for her so that she can have more support and be in a community. And some of you here know a little bit about that journey. It's not an easy thing to want to do, but I'm glad that it's possible. As I mentioned, we're here in Pennsylvania, actually to be near some family who are helping us out. But it's just her and me right now. And her brother is back in New York. But I wanted to read this other poem that has a political nod. My kids father, Robert E. Bowen III, there are some of his relatives here. He wrote a poem when we were first together in the 90s, living in Cincinnati. And I have a quote from that poem that is the epigraph for this. The poem is called President's Day. And the epigraph is, there was a lot of hair on the floor. And the poem is called Election 94 by Robert E. Bowen III. I don't know if you remember what happened in 94. That was the contract with America. The cold is also beautiful, shrinking my fingers, loosening my rings. My right hand holds my pen, holds the pen without slipping. Air circulates in small spurts and drafts, keeping me from dozing. Elections were your thing, your one published poem about Republicans taking over both houses in 94. Everyone is an asshole. Capital A, you wrote. You tried to guide me away from absolutes. In our first apartment, we pledged to clean the bathroom every 2 weeks. Now I can't go 2 days without spraying and scrubbing. The hair on the floor is mostly our son's, long like yours in your several hippie phases. You lived to see a Black man in the White House, died before his second term. Our son will be a year shy of voting age this next election. I wear rings only on my right hand, the one I write with farthest from my heart. Our son actually voted in his first presidential election this year. He can't attend right now because he's in class. I'm going to read a couple of new poems and see how they fly. The reason that I am a Slappering Hall Press author, which I'm very grateful for, is because of my dear friend Denise Duhamel. And we collaborated on many poems. She's a very noted collaborator and proponent of collaborative poetry and scholar of collaborative poetry. And so I was honored to collaborate with her. And she invited me to be the emerging poet to her established poet in the chapbook series for our book. So a lot of what Denise does with her writing is uses form in generative ways. And this poem is kind of in that spirit. It's called Primetime Sistina. They hooked me from the first season trailer. 3 women's wacky love lives, total binge watch material. Their apartment, a bunker, a fortress where they dress and recover from the ball or curse missed invitations, curse hormones, program their dating strategies, their diet and exercise, a family made, not born, with all the typical naughty family dynamics, laughs, tears, pratfalls. Trailer park travel, though, left me cold. What program director thought that one up? Who'd want to binge on bologna Wonder Bread sandwiches, cheese balls, and red cream soda? I'd rather stock my bunker with old school pot roast made by Edith Bunker to placate Archie, gobble all 9 seasons of All in the Family, starting with the pilot when their last name was Justice. Ball and chain marriage humor hitched to America's trailer struck gold in Davenport and Anaheim alike. Binge it now. Return to your primeval programming, a scroll of Queen's houses opening the program. Maude dealt with abortion a year after Gloria Bunker Stivick's miscarriage, a year before Roe v. Wade, binge drinking a must. In 2019, Focus on the Family broadcast 4D pictures of unborn babies in Times Square. Trail or trial, which to choose? Let the judge decide. Eye on the ball of reproductive freedom. Millions of moms bawling, time for supper, to hypnotize kids stuck on a program. Mom refuses to do dishes, huffs, I'll be in my trailer, draws a bubble bath. Daughter moans in her bunk, her episode yet to be scheduled, telling the pro-life family, I had an abortion. Pregnancy cravings, no joke. Binge pickles and ice cream. Baby needs mom to binge on mac and cheese, salty snacks, popcorn balls rolled in rainbow sprinkles. This morning, the CBS family was filming the latest police procedural program on my block in Queens. I turn into Archie Bunker, cursing doors marked Lucy and Desi on the damn trailer, code for the leads I'll love when I binge the next season of this cursed program. My best shot, the ball sticks irretrievably on the bunker. I don't know how to raise a family without TV. Stay tuned, official trailer. What's more American than television? YouTube, right? Which I do agree is here to stay. It's pretty sticky. That's how I watch TV now, is YouTube, actually, I admit. Okay, here's another poem that is actually dedicated to my daughter, Stella. It's called All the Feels. Your foot is crossed over mine. I think you are sleeping and then you peek out from behind the pillow. Songs on shuffle burst like blisters of memory, each ringing its own scene, full blown, with accompanying increases in heart rate, dilation of pupils. Your young skin is marked with signs of growth, with bumps of immune response to one irritant or another, lapses in hygiene, where soul meets body. I am only beginning to truly love you, to praise the cells of your body, their differentiation, whip slapping, sting less and less. Where could that girl have gone? Is it wrong to be glad you are not like other 16-year-olds, spooling away as if repelled? Instead, you snuggle and hug like the baby you never were, so weak, so sleepy. As you write your incomprehensible script in your brother's stolen notebook, eyebrows and hazel eyes, your father's legacy, you push the limits of my care. You will always need someone to make your way with. I haven't had a lot of writing happen during the pandemic. There's just been a lot of responsibilities and a lot of things going on, but here's a poem that and thank you for the notes, everyone. Here's a poem that I did manage to write fairly early on. And it was in a workshop that I took at the Hudson Valley Writers Center with Denise Duhamel. It was an amazing Zoom workshop and I got some really great drafts. She gave us poems for inspiration, and this is one that is inspired by a poem by Ruth Stone. It's called Repetition. You said, Mom, I have to talk to you about an emergency thing. I was asleep after bouts of wakefulness, my chest tight with dusts and molds, loosened by cursory swipes at cleaning. Taller than your father with his fine bones, glasses fogged from running, you tell the story. A man chasing a woman, her in bathrobe and underwear, barefoot, catching her once, and then the breaking free, first her, then him running past you. Last night, I had spoken of my loneliness, midlife, a widow with no prospects. I know, you said. You have not seen your girlfriend in 2 months. You called 911 about the man and woman, then missed 3 calls, your phone on silent. They say it may have been for information. You had no more information to give. The pair of doves call and call to each other from different branches of the tree. I roll up the blinds on the blank day. Up all night, you've ordered breakfast and will eventually sleep the rest of the day, waking again at night. What will we do about your sister who yells and stomps, hits and shoves me across the room? I think of genetic testing, the way you stood between me and your father. I'm here to help you. You don't have to fight. I don't want to go, the woman had said to the man. I know you do not want to repeat my life. And there's a poem that I've lost track of that I need to find. That one was addressed to my son. And I don't know how many of you, I know a lot of people here are New Yorkers, not everyone, but was it just me that heard all the mourning doves? They you know how the thing is, when there wasn't so much traffic and not very many people on the street with lockdown, there were a lot of birds. It was like, I felt like I was living in a bird sanctuary. That was actually a really cool thing. But a lot of mourning doves with their very mournful sound. I'm going to find it. I'm sorry. Please bear with me. This is called What the Living Say to the Dead. There's another poem that I wrote in Denise's workshop that is also there. You can probably hear the echo of what the living say, or what the living do. I'm so sorry. It's a Marie Howe title. In any case, wonderful poet. I'm very inspired by the wonderful poets that I read. This is called What the Living Say to the Dead. Our two young kids were monkey scrambling in my dream, and you, younger than ever, wanted me. We roamed the stone buildings of some ivied campus, working out our future, your apparent death behind us. You would stay with me, with us, and all would be well. Spring lilies were spreading in the pond, the first rowboats tentatively nosing out onto the water. Shadows alternated with dapples of sun, a buffet at midday, cocktails and crudités at sunset. At bedtime, we tucked ourselves in, as we did so many times, sheets a tangle, when you were ours and I was yours, and the clock struck with no more than the usual sense of dread. The problem with these dreams is that I always awaken. You can't be too clear when it comes to the dead, it seems. They have so much trouble hearing you above the din of everything they now know, the music of the spheres and all the rockers gone before their time, like you, the snowdrop cluster of your love, surprise in the shade of a mossy old oak, the sudden clearing where a lone fawn startles, then turns to follow the doe it has so recently emerged from, steaming and bloody and fierce, hungering for balance, poised for the chase. And I'll close with a poem that's an homage to a famous poem by Galway Kinnell that many of you may know, called After Making Love, We Hear Footsteps. In the process of these interviews for a residential placement, I was asked if Stella set things on fire. After bathing, I smell smoke. For I can rattle the pans while cooking, drop a dish or run the vacuum in the hallway, and Stella will stay behind her shut door, sleeping or drawing, reading or tending her kennel of stuffed dogs. But let me run the water and swirl in Epsom salts and lavender oil, slide in with a book and coffee, or just recline and soak, eyes closed, reading my own thoughts as they skein out, twining like one of those interlocking wind sculptures, gently rotating on a breeze, and she will dash to my room, root out everything most threatening to our mutual safety and tranquility, and as I rise dripping to reach for the towel, she is pilfering my most secret journal and scrawling stick figures on its pages with my hidden permanent markers, removing every knife and pair of scissors from their secure places. After I have dressed, chased her from my bed, retrieved my vintage edition of Through the Looking Glass, I smell it. Something burning or just burnt. And on the one uncovered patch of parquet, I see a wooden match, half blackened. And after sniffing every corner and pile, papers, folders, books, clothing waiting to be ignited, satisfied that no spark waits to flame into the heat of our destruction, I take the dead match and say, no, no, never, never, never play with matches, and collapse my arms around her small, solid fire plug body, which softens as she murmurs, sorry, so sorry, Mom, into my shoulder, and I pray that this innocence will not be her downfall, blessing her every hair, the animal scent of her bowed head. I love this sound of applause. Thank you. I have the pleasure of introducing the next poet. Let me get to the bios here. My friend, I'm a fan of Lynn McGee. So let me tell you a little bit about Lynn before she reads her wonderful poems. Lynn is the author of the poetry collection Tracks from Broadstone Books in 2019, Sober Cooking, Spite and Devil Press 2016, and 2 award-winning poetry chapbooks, Heirloom Bulldog, Bright Hill Press 2015, and Bonanza. Can you guys hear me? Is everything good? Okay, all right, good. Bright Hill Press 2015 and Bonanza, Slappering Hall Press 1997. Her work appears in current issues of the Lascaux Review, Tampa Review, and the Night Heron Barks. Arf, arf. Other poems are forthcoming in Sugar House Review, the Atlanta Review, Atticus Review, and Across the Waves, contemporary poetry from Ireland and the United States from Salmon Books, great press. Lynn McGee's children's book, Starting Over in Sunset Park, co-written with Jose Palaus, is forthcoming from Tilbury House Publishers. Please welcome the wonderful Lynn McGee.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. It's wonderful to read with everyone. I'm going to read, everyone can hear me okay? You can, okay. I'm going to read one poem from the historic chapbook from 1997 from Slappering Hall Press. And I just want to say that please check out the books at Slappering Hall Press and the Hudson Valley Writers Center. It's such an important literary center and the heartbeat of literary activity in New York. I know him, so Bill, can you get John under control? Okay, twins. So this poem is 20 years old. Twins, I wish you had stayed in that town where I followed, found your room, wore your clothes, and learned your jokes. I carry that photo of you balanced on the wing of a Piper Cub, stooping with the weight of your parachute, arms out for balance, your face not full of daring as I expected, but pleading, apologetic. At my wedding, you leapt through the camera's flash, blocking my pose, balletic, out of sync. I was first to leave home, but you ran off one night at a time, dropping from our second-story window, radio bulging from your hip pocket, freedom a silent, swinging gait, a boy whose hands reeked of gasoline and marijuana, the wet lawn white in moonlight. You let a girl with a black eye sleep against you at the airport, and you let me steal your friends. You arched your back across a pool table, gray eyes level with green velvet, aiming your stick and stroking it across your finger, women in golf shirts vying to light your cigarette and lose their bets, in that bar where I told you to meet me, hoping they'd unnerve you, happy when they didn't. We used to spin each other, work up speed and let go. One would watch and one would fly. One slammed into slate and was yanked off the floor, flattened on the kitchen counter, skull wrenched under water, red and sucking down the drain. They lathered her hair while they were at it. I say it was you. You say it was me. I'm going to read, thank you. I'm going to read a poem from this little chapbook from Bright Hill Press, and Bertha Rogers, the founder and editor of Bright Hill Press, is here today. It's called White Blaze, and it's about wild boars. A blade of fur along his spine means this boar's forebears were herded onto wooden ships, and the white blaze on his face means his mother escaped a factory farm or made a run for it when some truck spun on ice and slammed to its side, sows frozen to the trailer's metal ribs, shrieks fading as she bombed through the Oklahoma scrub where he was born and raised, upper tusks like whetstones, stropping lower tusks into swords that impale dogs when he's cornered, send their limp bodies flying. Sun high, he wallows in the greasy bank of a cow pond, sets out snuffling for snails, and savors corn seething in its husks. Salamanders are sweet packets of blood, and a fawn carcass steams as he rifles to the bone. Trap smart, he shuns piles of kibble and tunnels beneath the crackle of electric fences. A million of his kind, his mother's side, are dropped twisting in the boiling vat or wag their heads in madness, piglets nursing through bars, his father's progeny gouging pits into golf courses, grinding against foam poles, creosote staining the calloused shield of their shoulders, hard drums of their sides, world gutted wide. And ironically, I just adopted a dog that's used to hunt wild boars, the blackmouth cur. She's very dangerous dog. No, she's not. Okay, this is from Sober Cooking. And this book is kind of, a lot of the poems in this book are about my experience of being banned from my my partner's hospital room by her family when she went into the hospital with heart failure. This is it. Your sternum, where I rested my head those years we shared a bed, had been cracked like a lobster claw, and a jigsaw in the surgeon's hand flicks its razor tongue. Behold, the pericardium, milky veil that guards your fist of a heart, finally loosening its grip. This morning, in a southern state saturated in sunshine and free of helmet laws, a young man was mangled beyond repair, but his strong heart, hunkered down in its cave, was gently pried out like a barnacle, and his gift, in its yellow cushion of fat, was packed in ice, flown north, and rolled with expert haste to the west side of Manhattan, where you sat up in bed dialing the call that buzzed in my backpack. You text me too, this is it. And by nightfall, surgeons stitched the pulsing muscle of a stranger into the cavity of your chest, atrium to atrium, vein to vein, and your blood finds its new hub and passes through. I'm going to read now from Tracks, and my publisher, Larry Moore, is in the audience. Yay, Larry, Broadstone Books. Check them out. Scent, and S-C-E-N-T. So the first poem that I read, read and was written 20 years ago, called Twins. This is about this sister after she died, like this is like 20 years later, Scent. They cut her clothes from her, the scissors thick blade nosing beneath her pants cuff, racing up her leg, cold metal leaving its line across her stomach. A paramedic slid the pieces of fabric from beneath her, careful not to jostle while her brain still bled. Later, someone tucked her jeans, blouse, and sandals into a brown paper bag, and I noticed it slumped against the baseboard in our parents' bedroom, put my face into its mouth, and breathed my sister's familiar scent, cigarettes, hairspray, cologne, reliving her last day, windows down and hair flying, radio thumping, the roadside rippling with tall grass, one fine apple nestled in her satchel. Gonna move on to some new work. So that sister had four kids, and one of them was named Patrick, and he had a chromosome deletion. He was very disabled and severely autistic, and he died last December. And he was very, there was a lot of intervention at the end, and he was hooked up to a lot of machines, but the kind of beautiful part of that was that because he related so intensely to anything mechanical, he sort of dug it. So He wasn't afraid. Differently alert. He doesn't make eye contact. The nurse reports of my nephew, who is limp with sedation, lips slack, ventilator wheezing on his behalf, inflating his lungs in a rhythm both amiable and stern. He looks right past me, she says gently. He's probably unaware of his surroundings. We thank her, too polite to point out the monitor's appeal just behind her, neon green zigzagging across its screen. We don't bring to her attention the splendor of syringe pumps stacked in a tower, the elegant tangle of cables, polished elbows of pipe. My nephew, who took the door off the stove before he could walk, who faked seizures to score an ambulance ride and be rolled into that luminous cavern of tools, stares past the nurse at an alluring silver dial, a corrugated blue tube, and is unbothered at being part machine now himself, almost fitting in. Gonna lighten it up here a little now, folks. I'm almost done. I have 3 more poems. This is a COVID poem, and that's lighter, so, you know, gives you some perspective. And this is in my manuscript, The TV in the Other Room, which is all based on streaming series and television shows from the mid-20th century to the present. The virus gains a foothold just north of New York City. New Rochelle is Rob and Laura land. Dick Van Dyke swings his briefcase and waves at the front door to Mary Tyler Moore, who I saw once at the Met during intermission, waiting in line for the ladies' room. My heart lurched at how tall and frail she seemed as she leaned against a wall, beloved doyenne attended to by her friends, though to us, she would always be Laura Petrie, who got herself out of jams with quick thinking and nerve, who rocked those black capris and a white tailored shirt, who would have kept her wits about her in a containment zone. You remember the New Rochelle was a containment, you guys remember that last spring? Okay. So this is a poem about Mae West. And a lot of the poems in the book, in the manuscript, The TV in the Other Room, look at characters in a feminist lens, I guess. And as so that's the perspective on Mae West. Adjusting the light. She was born with it, sashayed from child to siren, and branded herself Diamond Lil, platinum curls, opulent cleavage, and trademark butch swagger as she sauntered to center stage, hips rolling like John Wayne entering a saloon, holster low, Hollywood her new frontier. She saved Paramount from bankruptcy, bossed everyone around. Loosen up, unbend, you'll feel better. Rooms of studio heads parted like the Red Sea to let her pass. Thousands stood in line to watch her shimmy on screen, low-cut gown a waterfall of glitter. She wrote her own scripts, released the brake on lust. Men swooned at her well-upholstered curves, head high in a hat big as a tire. She held out her hand with treats and they scampered down from trees. Marriage? Only as a last resort. She fell for an accordion player's pretty face, a boxer's lean grace, bought the building when a landlord banned her dark-skinned lover. She was lion tamer, elephant driver, belly dancer, Brooklynite, bantering with a bevy of black maids espousing their opinions of men. Drag queens blossomed in the light she shared. Pansy-crazed dancers twirled with pride decades before its time. They hid in plain sight, that society of opinionated women, extravagant men, and May. She elevated fallen women and lined her eyes with coal. She perfected the art of lounging in a satin bed jacket, cigarette holder dangling from a wrist limp with sultry and subordination. The switchboard blew up like a Christmas tree when she trained her beam of pheromones on a ventriloquist dummy, drilling straight through its hollow form to the quaking human that held it. Sensors shrieked like starlings clotting a tree, bumped her off the marquee to welcome zealous toddler Shirley Temple. She didn't cede her throne so much as move it to Vegas, taking the stage with a pack of muscle men, oiled and beaming as they orbited around her. Flash bulbs sizzled and popped. She hit the clubs, voluptuous octogenarian, running the show, tech crew trailing with tripods and lights. She makes me examine my uninspired choices. My chest cracks open. You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. She shows us how to hold out our cup, make someone else pour, and be in charge of saying when. Her voice is everywhere. I let it in. I'm gonna read one last poem. I guess I'll read 8 poems instead of 9, but I'm still well within my time limit, fellow poets, just saying. It's called If I Had What Animals Have, and this is from another manuscript called Zip Ties and a Belt. And as you can imagine, with a title like that, it's about animals. So, if I had what animals have, by Dawn. That knot of weeds would loosen from around my ankles, and I would rise on my hind legs, skate on the water's surface like a basilisk, send an arc of spray as if angling my skis around the corner of a lake like my mother, who circles its perimeter without getting her hair wet, lets go of the orange handle and glides into the shallow beach near our cabins, every curl in place. If I had what animals have, my retina would bloom with more cones than the human eye is meant to hold, and I would see not just the hues of fruit my early human ancestors relied on, the wine red of berries, yellow velvet of pears, battered blue of plums, but colors shimmering at a frequency having only to do with pleasure. I would know when to fight, when to activate flight. I would regenerate lost limbs and sleep with one radiant hemisphere of my brain at a time, reallocate my energy in a more strategic way. My bones would narrow and hollow out. I would fly, and when I'd had enough, I would contract, curl into myself like a jellyfish bobbing on death's maternal wave, retracting my tentacles and reverting to my natal state, sinking to the floor of the ocean where I began. I would wait there, take a moment to savor the vast, cold dark, and thank those who made me, the lizard clawing at a trench and squeezing eggs from her cloaca, the starfish shooting a cloud of cells into the water, the mother who infused me in her womb. I would thank them all, then restart my life. Thank you. Okay, so it is now my great pleasure to introduce my friend and wonderful poet, Susanna H. Case. She is the author of 7 books of poetry, most recently Dead Shark on the N Train from Broadstone Books in 2020, which won a Pinnacle Book Award for Best Poetry Book and an NYC Big Book Award Distinguished Favorite. She is also the author of 5 chapbooks. She's lazy. What can I say? She, it just doesn't work. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's really a lot. Her first collection, The Scottish Cafe from Slapring Hall Press, was re-released in a dual language English-Polish version, Kariana Strzaska, by Opolol University Press, and her poems also have been translated into Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. Susanna Case is a professor and program coordinator at the New York Institute of Technology in New York City. And you can see her website, I think is posted. It's www.susannahcase.com. Please welcome Susanna H. Case.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Margot, for everything. And thank you, Jason and KBG John. And so I will start. I'm going to start by reading one from this chapbook. It's hard to see. The title is The Scottish Cafe that Lynn mentioned. This is basically what started out my poetry career, and it is how I met all of these other wonderful poets. So the Scottish Cafe is a series of poems that are based on a group of mathematicians in what was then Poland, right before and during World War II. So this is called Fixed Points, and you don't have to know any math. At first, they meet at the Cafe Roma in Lvov on Saturday nights to discuss mathematics and drink cognac. But Banach lives beyond his means and is annoyed that he can't work out something with the proprietor about his debt. So he persuades the others to move across the street to Zelensky's place, the Scottish Cafe, where the food is not as good, the cognac is not as good, but the music is good and the credit is better. And they begin to meet each day around 5, Banach, Mazur, always the center, at a little table with a marble top, where they talk and write and stare silently at the spaces in their minds, filled with even more formulas than those written down on the marble tabletop, some of which later get written down into a school notebook with a marble pattern cardboard cover that Banach's adored wife, Lucia, buys for 2.5 zlotys at a drugstore in Lvov, and into which Banach, who does not like to write things down, enters the first problem in 1935. Problems go on odd pages, solutions on the opposite pages, filling up the Scottish book. It is chaos sometimes, arguing and writing and thinking, but chaos is better than order, says Auerbach. You can't lose anything in chaos or find anything either. But a lot of mathematics is found at the Scottish Cafe and lost too. One session lasts 17 hours and results in a proof of a theorem about Banach spaces, but no one writes it on paper, only on the tabletop, which is wiped off later by the janitor after the cafe shuts for the night, which still today no one can reproduce. So for the rest of my time, I'm going to be reading from this book, Dead Shark on the N Train, which is my Broadstone books book and my most recent book. There's a couple of themes threaded through. This one is gender and one is violence, and sometimes the two combined. And I'm going to start with a poem that, well, you know, when we were I work at a university, and when we were all there in person, a big problem was recurrent school shootings. And now, of course, there aren't any because there's very little that's in person, but this was inspired by a workshop that we had before, in the before time, and it's called Active Shooter. He had a well thought out system. He appeared off-brand weird. He was solo 98% of the time. He wasn't stupid any of the time. He appeared to know the building. He planned the operation. He was a quiet man, everyone said, never a problem. He was a problem. He was a monster. He was not a monster. He did a monstrous thing. He shot for 7 to 11 minutes. We didn't pay that extra minute of attention. We tried our concealment. The weapons bullets penetrated our desks. The weapons bullets penetrated the partitions between our cubicles. 38 cal, 9 mil, 12 gauge, M67 for the AK-47. The weapons penetrated our file cabinets. We confused concealment and cover. We had no cover. We were lizards dreaming like birds. This is called Walking Home. The girl walking home alone doesn't know what to do about the stranger who calls her name. He claims he has a gun. His knowing her name is a gun. He blocks her way. Rail track, chain link fence, no parking sign. It's like that test she had in school yesterday, having to choose which animal doesn't belong. She guessed it was the cow. This girl knows nothing of farms. On her left, the empty tennis club. In front, the man who snarls he will kill her. Let me see the gun, in her piccolo voice. A train rushes by. If she were in it, her life would be different. The world is full of noise, weeds, cigarette butts, rusted car, locked shed. She runs. She doesn't know if he can keep up. He's too old to catch her. He screams again, I'll kill you. She doesn't look back. So in New York, the junior high schools the public ones are very often numbered. And this is JHS, Junior High School, 190. Every white girl deep into doo-wop or rock envies Gilda, who gets to dance with the black guys at Friday school parties because we say she's had ballet. While we're all watching Gilda shimmy, her blonde hair loosening from its dancer's knot, the girl from France is on the roof working up the will to jump. She's pregnant, too many weeks, her belly thickening. How could she not have known? We whisper as if we know something. A policeman brings her down, red-eyed, red lights flashing, down the block, past the crowd, past the red brick junior high, windows barred like a house of detention. She never returns. Our bodies are bribes, the need carried in our book bags to get the best boys. What we know is we want to be royalty. We want everything we touch turning to gold. This is called a small hotel in Monterosso. Monterosso is in the Cinque Terre in Italy. Afternoon, the cold shock of an ocean swim early in the season, then bruschetta, mozzarella, tomatoes, anchovies with brown toast. Back in bed, the slurry warmth of you reminds me of scratchy recordings, days we used to slow dance, and on the table, the unexpected sweetness of chacatra, white raisin wine. In the square, we hear the thin man hawking thick-grained olive wood cutting boards. For today, no knives. So I wrote this poem when a childhood friend of mine who I was no longer close to was dying of cancer and reconnected with me and needed for me to do some things for her as she was dying. And it's called Death Has Come In, with a line from Eliot. Angus Barbieri, Scotsman, holds the Guinness World Record for the longest liquid fast, lasted over a year before eating a boiled egg and a slice of buttered toast. 3 people fit into his old pants. Angus went on to live a happy life, wife, kids, kept off the weight. You are not going to have that egg. Cancer 2.0 has launched 3 weeks with only lemon ices and ice chips you lump the size of a grapefruit next to your colostomy bag from the last bout. The doctors have nothing more. Even the television you love so much has spent its capacity to distract. Last time you were in hospital, we argued about politics. Kavanaugh on the screen. I yelled a lot about gender and stalked out. I am not a nice person. I sit here thinking mostly of myself, my relief the big C got you and not me. In the room, the women come and go. They jot on charts, no one talking of Michelangelo or time, except when the religious guy comes around. Burial plans, where, which dress, a sundress, a wig. How can I, a person full of words, not know what to say? You were always my best friend, you tell me, and try to smile. The truth is, we have not been close since high school. I want to touch you, but do not want to touch you. I am not a nice person. I cry, not out of sympathy, repelled and scared. Your covers are pushed down and too much of you shows, and I don't say anything, and yet I put that shriveled flesh in this poem. The winter winds blow outside, the air is stifling. I pull off my scarf, my sweater, heap knits on a chair. I roll up and fold, unfold, and roll out my hospital pass. There's a few historical figures in this book, and one of them is Maria Callas. And this is a poem called Diva. And the other two people referred to in the poem are Jackie Kennedy and Aristotle Onassis. And you may or may not know they had this triangle going for a while. So this is Diva. If you're forced to sing as a child and you hate it, you'll replace devotion to singing with love. If the man you love pushes you to retire from the world, to serve only him, your talent just opens a hole in the earth for you to fall through. And if you're the chubby, ugly duckling as a child, in your mind, you'll always be the chubby, ugly duckling. Even after you bring in piles of money, a public waiting online for days to hear you. Even when you lose so much weight, you stress your voice, you'll be the difficult one, the one who is gossiped about when the man you love isn't the man you married. If the man you love leaves you to woo the most famous woman in the world because she represents America, more refined, even thinner than you, you'll hole up in your apartment until he begs you to take him back, threatening to crash his Mercedes into your building if you won't. But if you've abdicated your power, agreeing to be the lesser wife, you don't have the only thing a man with power, obsessed with power wants. It doesn't matter that you feel like a woman. He will disappear for weeks, forget to phone, call you a cunt with a whistle in her throat. Still, you'll sneak in through the service entrance to see him one last time when he's dying. His canary, you'll call yourself, your voice cracking on the high C. This is the unpublished poems of Marilyn Monroe. I'm very interested in the public versus the private, and Marilyn Monroe had a rather literary interior life, which never really showed up certainly on screen. The unpublished poems of Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn in a striped swimsuit reading Ulysses, photographed by Eve Arnold, 1955. She wanted blondes to be thought sexy and astute. She wanted herself to be thought astute. Blonde, pejorative, 19th century, as in dizzy blonde, as in a blonde moment, as in risque British burlesque performer, as in French courtesan, Rosalie Duthay. Marilyn left fragments of handwritten texts, crossed out words, inserted phrases, her memories, dreams, fears, enjammed. The public knew only the lines of her Cupid's bow, but no silly woman would stand by Arthur Miller as he refused to name communists. Marilyn, surrounded by 430 books with penciled notes, writes to herself, "Our life, they have cheated you." And I'm going to end with a short poem from the middle section of the book, which is devoted to Frances Glessner Lee, who created 20 dollhouses, dioramas of crime scenes in the early part of the 20th century, which are still being used to train forensic investigators. And the poems in the middle section are based on her life and also are responses to the dioramas. And This one is called Small Caliber. Where are you going with a 22 in your hand, showing off your Second Amendment, shooting off your mouth, shooting her struck dumb in the chest, struck dumb boy? He struck her shooting upward from the street, anonymous shot, she on a chair, still in her apron and hairnet, hanging the weekly wash on the two-story porch, body falling, Sunday morning. Husband, drunk and cantankerous, he could have done it. Loose with his hands, he too owns a 22 and a swagger. Thank you. I'm going to put some links up in the chat for all of us. These are links for all of our publishers and bookshop links and website links, just so you have them all in one place.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you. I'm trying to get the complete list. I just had the list here because I don't want to leave anyone out. Thank you, Margot, and thank you, Lynn, and Susanna, and Amy. That was a really gorgeous reading.
So great to see everybody too. That was fantastic. I feel like the last time I saw you, Amy, was in the KGB bar. That might not be true, but it feels like it's true.
I saw Amy at the Met. We were at the Metropolitan Museum for the Please Come Educate Your Students Here cocktail party that we're not doing this season. I'm going to stop the recording.
Wait, John or Jason, hold up a second.
Yeah.
If anybody does not get our weekly email blast, if they want to just type your email in the chat and we'll linger a bit and copy and paste them in. And what we do is we send out poems by our readers each week and most weeks. And and it's how we we know that we can reach you, because sometimes the algorithms make it very difficult on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook has some security settings that give us trouble sometimes, where if you link straight from Zoom, sometimes it doesn't work. But if you're on the email list, I think it comes in every Sunday, more or less, and it'll be a couple poems from the next day's readers. And I think we had a fantastic audience tonight, and it would be great to see everybody again.
It would.
Yeah, and the link that you used tonight will continue to work for the rest of the season. So every Monday at 7, we're here. Next week, we'll be back with Elaine Equi and Jerome Sala. The week after that, we'll have Fiona J. Loran and Nate Klug from Princeton University Press. The week after that, November 30th, it's you. You're the reader. We're having the post-Thanksgiving open mic. And so some people did sign up for that by messaging me directly. But if you'd like to be in the open mic, you can message any of our social media accounts. Jada, can you tell us where to find the KGB Monday Night social media? Jada, are you here?
Sorry, I'm here. I was just posting everything.
Yay, thanks.
So I posted everybody, I screenshotted each writer and I put it on our Instagram. Our Instagram is all lowercase. It's KGB Monday Night. I'll put it in KGB Monday Night. I'll put it in the chat. And you'll see more updates either through the email or you'll see it on the Facebook page, on the Instagram page. I mostly work through the Instagram page, and I think Matt usually mostly works through the Facebook page. And so I also screenshotted the links that Susanna put up for everyone's books, Lapper Hall Press and Harper Valley Writers. Harper Valley Writers. I put that all on the Instagram as well.
Great, thanks.
And then the week after the open mic, I believe, is the Ann Carson. Hang on a second.
Yes, Ann Carson, Emily Gray, and Thomas Mallon.
Yeah.
And that will be our big season finale. All right, I'm gonna stop recording.